July 30th, 1975, 2:30 p.m. The temperature in Bloomfield Hills is a stifling 85 degrees, the kind of heat that makes the asphalt smell like a fresh grave. Jimmy Hoffa, the man who owned the roads, the man who moved the nation's blood, is standing in a parking lot. He's annoyed. His knit shirt is sticking to his back. He's the most powerful man in America who doesn't live at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. If Jimmy snaps his fingers, the grocery stores go empty in 48 hours. But in 60 seconds, Jimmy Hoffa won't be a man anymore. He'll be a logistical problem. Welcome to Verified Crime Files. Thanks for the support. Stay tuned for daily true crime updates. And when you're done watching, hit subscribe, tap the notification bell, and share. Thank you. For 50 years, the FBI has played a game of whack-a-mole with history. They've dug up end zones in New Jersey. They've ripped up floorboards in Detroit. They've spent $100 million of tax money looking for a corpse. They failed, not because the mob was lucky, but because the mob was tactical. This isn't a story about a murder. Anyone can pull a trigger. This is a story about tactical erasure, the cold, industrial process of turning a king into atoms. Because when you kill a man like Hoffa, you don't hide the body. You unmake the world he stood on. To understand why Jimmy had to be erased, you have to understand what he was made of. Jimmy didn't come from the Ivy League. He came from the docks. He came from the strawberry strikes of 1932, where the air smelled of rotting fruit and wet blood. He realized early on that power isn't a vote. It's leverage. By 1957, Jimmy had centralized the Teamsters. He had created the Golden Goose, the Central States Pension Fund. It was a mountain of cash so large it had its own gravity. To the average trucker, it was a retirement. To the Mafia families in Chicago and New York, it was a private, unregulated bank. Every time a driver in Des Moines paid his dues, a casino in Las Vegas got a loan. This was the original sin of American labor. Jimmy built the table, but he invited the wolves to eat at it. But by 1975, the wolves were full. Jimmy had gone to prison, been pardoned by Nixon, and now he wanted his throne back. But his replacement, Frank Fitzsimmons, was easier to deal with. Frank didn't ask questions. Frank let the juice flow without a fight. Jimmy was no longer an asset. He was a liability with a very loud mouth and a very long memory. The order didn't come with a shout. It came with a whisper in a dimly lit social club. The man has to go, and he can't ever come back. The hit wasn't the hard part. The mob kills people every day. The hard part was the forensics of fame. Jimmy Hoffa was too big for a ditch. If a single drop of his blood was found in a Michigan basement, the feds would use it to burn down every family from Detroit to New Orleans. The tactical solution? The peace meeting. Jimmy is at the Machus Red Fox restaurant. He thinks he's there to settle a beef with Tony Provenzano and Tony Giacalone. He's early. He's vulnerable. A maroon Mercury Marquis pulls up. The driver is Chucky O'Brien, Jimmy's foster son. The ultimate psychological leverage. You don't get into a car with a stranger. You get into a car with family. Jimmy climbs into the back. He doesn't see the heavy-duty industrial plastic tucked under the seat. He doesn't notice the silence of the other men. As the car pulls away, the narrative loop of Jimmy's life begins to close. He thinks he's going to house to talk power. He's actually going to a drop spot. This is where the legend ends and the physics begin. Professional killers don't use cannons. They use geometry. The house, likely on Bevelin Street in Detroit, had been prepared hours in advance. The prep, floor-to-ceiling industrial polyethylene. It smells like a chemical plant. It's designed to catch every stray hair, every flake of skin, every microscopic droplet of DNA. The weapon, a .22 caliber pistol. Why? Because a .45 makes a mess. A .22 is quiet. It enters the skull, bounces around, and stays there. No exit wound, no spray, just a quiet pop that sounds like a dry branch snapping. Jimmy walks through the door. He sees the plastic. In that millisecond, the king of the roads realizes he's just a piece of freight. Pop, pop. 2 behind the right ear. Jimmy hits the plastic. The unmaking has begun. Now we get to the part the movies get wrong. They don't bury him under a stadium. That's an amateur's mistake. Concrete is porous. It holds scent. Dirt is alive. It shifts. The mob didn't want a grave. They wanted total molecular redistribution. The body is rolled in the plastic. It's loaded into the trunk of the Mercury. The car is then driven to a sanitation company or a fat-rendering plant, places the mob already owned through union contracts. There is an industrial incinerator in Hamtramck. It's used to burn animal carcasses and industrial waste. At 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, a human being isn't a person anymore. Within an hour, you are carbon and bone ash. But they didn't stop there. The ash is mixed with industrial waste. It's loaded onto a barge, or it's mixed into the very asphalt being used to pave the expanding Michigan highway system. The tactical irony is staggering. Jimmy Hoffa, the man who built the trucking industry, was literally paved into the roads as trucks moved on. The Mercury Marquis? It wasn't crushed. That leaves a paper trail. It was stripped, bleached with industrial-grade acid. The seats were burned. The metal was melted down in a foundry. By sunrise on July 31st, there is no physical evidence that James Riddle Hoffa had ever existed on this planet. The FBI's greatest mistake was looking for a where. They should have been looking for a how. For 50 years, the mob fed the feds a series of elaborate ghosts. They leaked rumors about Giant Stadium. They staged confessions to burial sites in Jersey. Why? Because as long as the feds were digging holes in the dirt, they weren't looking at the ledgers. The mystery of Hoffa became a tactical shield for the Mafia. It made them look like magicians. It created a ghost in the machine that terrified any union leader who thought about crossing the families. The consequence wasn't just the death of a man. It was the death of an era. When Jimmy vanished, the heart of the American labor movement stopped beating. The drivers lost their lion. The government got their boogeyman. And the mob? They got the money. The pension fund, Jimmy's golden goose, was picked clean while the world was busy asking, "Where's Jimmy?" We want there to be a secret grave. We want a dramatic reveal, a body in a casket, a smoking gun. We want closure. But the world isn't a movie. It's a factory. The men who erased Jimmy Hoffa didn't hate him. They just treated him like any other piece of bad inventory. They processed him. They refined him. They distributed him across the infrastructure of a nation. So, next time you're driving down I-75 at midnight, and the hum of the tires on the pavement sounds like a low, rhythmic growl, don't bother looking at the GPS. You aren't looking for Jimmy Hoffa. You're driving on him. The FBI calls it the greatest unsolved mystery in history. The mob calls it a successful business trip. But the real question isn't where Jimmy went. It's who's running the machine now. If you want to see the modern-day erasers at work, stick around for our breakdown of the 2025 NBA scandal. The players change, but the game is eternal. Would you like me to suggest the music cues and sound effects that should accompany this script to maximize the emotional pacing?